Good afternoon. My name is Carl Lissick, and I'd like to welcome you to the Green Radio Network. On the Green Radio Network, we bring you a variety of green topics and the latest information on green technology and transportation in Indiana. This program features environmental leaders throughout the Chicagoland area and the nation. The Green Radio Network is sponsored by the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission and South Shore Clean Cities, of which I am the executive director. South Shore Clean Cities is a U.S. Department of Energy government-industry partnership that works to reduce foreign petroleum consumption in the transportation sector. Today, our guest is Mr. Ken Parrent. He's the Director of Biofuels with the Indiana Corn and Soybean Alliance. Ken, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Carl. Great to be part of the program.
Well, Ken, again, I think a lot of people throughout northern Indiana, they don't know a lot about Indiana Corn and the Soybean Alliance. Can you tell a little bit about what the Indiana Corn and Soybean Alliance does?
Well, both of the organizations are checkoff organizations supported by funds from Indiana corn and soybean producers.
Okay.
The soybean organization is part of the National Soybean Checkoff Fund. The Indiana Corn Marketing Council is a checkoff that was created by the Indiana legislature. It is a state fund. But we support production and utilization of both corn and soybeans here in the state. Our goal is to maximize the return for our corn and soybean producers, as well as provide all the related benefits to the people of Indiana.
Absolutely. You do a great job. And so how many years has the Indiana Corn and Soybean Alliance been promoting biofuels like biodiesel and ethanol in our state?
Well, shortly after the Clean Air Act of 2005 was passed, the Indiana Soybean Alliance and the Corn Marketing Council both got involved in the biodiesel and ethanol promotion business. So it's been just a shade over a decade.
I see. And Ken, can you just kind of give our listeners how we rank in our state in regards to corn and soybean production?
Corn production, we are typically, it varies some from year to year, but typically we're going to be in the top 5, and the same for soybean production. Last year we had a little bit of an off year due to weather, and some of the northwestern states had a great year, had a record year, but typically we're going to be well into that top 5, behind states like Iowa, Illinois and Minnesota, and maybe Nebraska.
Sure. And all Big Ten schools there also. So
pretty much, yes.
So obviously, Indiana Corn Marketing Council and the Indiana Soybean Alliance, they play obviously big roles in our Indiana agriculture. So what are some of the benefits of biofuels providers to Indiana corn and soybean?
Well, first of all, obviously, the market that's created through the use of biofuels benefits our corn and soybean producers. But beyond that, it has an economic impact for the state of Indiana. The ethanol plants alone employ more than 500 people with very good paying jobs here in the state, and they support about 4,000 full-time jobs in total. In addition, we have at the Louis Dreyfus plant in Claypool the largest biodiesel plant in the United States, which are some additional jobs and some additional economic benefits.
Absolutely.
But the ethanol industry, I think, provided about $44 million in taxes to the state of Indiana and various local governments last year. In addition, that doesn't even reflect the savings that we get in terms of environmental benefits to the people of Indiana.
Right. And again, I know, with our working with you is, it's an honor and a pleasure. And again, I think, buying from Indiana, producing, farmers is better than us importing oil from across overseas. And, we see the many benefits of that and, just some of the opportunities for, reducing our dependence on imported oil, but then also, benefiting, like you said, Ken, the economic benefits for our own state, which is fantastic. So I know we've been involved with you with the Indiana Office Energy Development. I know recently we just announced several grant awards through the Hoosier Homegrown Fuel Grant Program. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, in 2015, the Indiana Office of Energy Development along with some partners, the Clean Cities organizations and the Department of Agriculture, applied for a grant from the USDA Biofuels Infrastructure Partnership. ICMC, or the Corn Marketing Council, provided the matching funds necessary to obtain the grant, and we were able to secure an $895,000 grant from the USDA. The purpose of the grant is to fund fuel dispensers compatible with ethanol blends higher than 10%. To date, more than $1 million of grant funding has been committed to 4 retailers who will add more than 60 pumps for E15 and E85 ethanol blends at 35 locations across Indiana. Applications are currently being taken for the remaining funds, a total of approximately $280,000.
Which is amazing. And if people were, potential retailers were interested in applying for that, where would they find that information, Ken?
Well, they can go to the Office of Energy Development website or to the Indiana Corn website, indianacorn.org.
Oh, wonderful.
And they will find a link to the grant information.
Right, and both Clean Cities coalitions also have that listed on our event, our project page, and at southshorecleancities.org or greaterindiana.com. So again, if anybody that is listening that would be interested in this program, they can get a hold of one of us, get a hold of Ken, and we'd be happy to help you and talk to you about the benefits of this program to your retail stations. So. Ken, we're going to be right back, and you're listening to the Green Radio Network here on AM 1420 WIMS Radio. I'm your host, Carl Lissick, and we'll be right back with Mr. Ken Parrent right after this.
There's nothing more important than spending time outdoors with your family. That's why it's so important to do whatever you can to keep our air clean. It's good for the environment and good for the health of your friends and family. Take a closer look at how poor quality is affecting our community. Across the 3 counties of Northwest Indiana, recent studies from the American Lung Association show that 9% of adults suffer from asthma, 4% live with chronic bronchitis, 38% have a form of cardiovascular disease, and 10% of the children in Lake and LaPorte counties struggle with pediatric asthma. Now, the number of adults with asthma is nearly that of adults with diabetes. Consider how diabetics make adjustments to their diet in order to be as healthy as possible. Everyone can make adjustments to improve air quality and the quality of life for those who live with asthma and other lung diseases. Northwest Indiana, clean air, think green, breathe easy. A message from NERPC.
Welcome back to the Green Radio Network here on AM 1420 WIMS Radio. I'm Carl Lissick of South Shore Clean Cities, here to bring you the latest information on green projects and topics across the nation. Our guest today is Mr. Ken Parrent. He's the Director of Biofuels with the Indiana Corn and Soybean Alliance. And Ken, again, all the great work that you're doing throughout our state. We're just excited about all the new things that are happening throughout the state of Indiana. So I know recently that you've been working with fuel retailers and a convenience store chain, Family Express, who was just recently awarded the Who's Your Homegrown Fuel grant program. Can you talk a little bit about what they're going to be introducing here into the northern Indiana market?
Sure. They're going to be adding a new product to their line, E15. As you know, nearly all gasoline sold in Indiana contains 10% ethanol. In 2011, the EPA approved the sale of gasoline that contains 15% ethanol, or E15, and it's for use. It was approved for use in vehicles manufactured in 2001 or later. Prior to approval, the E15 was the most highly tested fuel ever sold in the United States and has fueled more than 100 million consumer miles with no reports of engine problems. GM began providing specific warranties for E15 in new cars sold beginning in 2012, and Ford followed suit in 2013. Today, 80% of the new cars sold in the U.S. provide specific warranties covering the use of E15. E15 offers a higher octane rating, 88 versus the 87 in regular, and typically costs 2 to 5 cents a gallon less than regular gasoline. There's no mileage loss, and some higher performance engines may actually see a miles per gallon benefit. The bottom line is that E15 will provide Indiana consumers with an additional option at the pump, a cleaner burning, renewable, homegrown fuel that's going to reduce our reliance on crude oil imports and provide a reduction in greenhouse gases.
Again, all good stuff, Ken. I think we're just hearing all these greater benefits that are coming not only to our area but the entire state, and we're really excited about the implementation of these blender pumps into northern Indiana. So as you work with a lot of the automakers and as they're working to meet the increasingly stringent CAFE standards and mileage standards and greenhouse gas emission standards, what role do you think biofuels will play in the future of helping automakers meet these greenhouse gas requirements, Ken?
Well, it's interesting, Carl. Just earlier this morning, I was on a conference call with a group of ag and ethanol industry leaders who are working with the automakers on the fuel of the future. As you know, the automakers are looking at CAFE standards that are going to require them to meet a fleet economy average of, or a miles per gallon average of 54.5 miles per gallon by 2025. And the automakers are seriously concerned about how they're going to get to that. Obviously, the engines of today are not the answer. They believe that the engine of the future is going to be smaller, lighter, and higher compression, and will require a fuel that has a higher octane than the fuels that are available on the market today. Ethanol right now is the cheapest source of octane on the market. And, something like an E25 or an E30, maybe an E35, probably gets the automakers to where they need to be with that fuel.
I see.
So I think that's where we're going. That octane source is not necessarily limited to ethanol. There may be some other answers, but at this point, ethanol looks like the cheapest way to get there.
It's wonderful. And Ken, I know there's something coming up very shortly here in the month of May down in Indianapolis. And why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Well, we're just a few weeks away from the 100th running of the Indianapolis 500. And if you live in Indiana, particularly if you live here in central Indiana, that's really a big event. The Indy cars, in recent years anyway, run on a fuel that's composed of 85% ethanol. Now, if you own a flex fuel vehicle, you can put E85 in your flex fuel vehicle. And it's not exactly the same fuel. Obviously, the racing fuel is higher octane to fuel those big engines, but the concept's the same. Both are a high percentage of ethanol.
Right, and again, I think as a consumer, as an advocate for racing, and to see these cars going 200 miles an hour running on ethanol is just amazing. And it's another great. It's the spectacle. I forgot the exact words that they use, Ken, in regards to the spectacle of all of sports. Is the and again, being the 100th year of racing at Indianapolis is phenomenal. So. So again, I think there's something else that's coming up later this year, Ken, with bicentennial of our state. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Well, one of the events associated with the bicentennial is going to be the Bicentennial Torch, which is going to make an appearance in each and every one of the 92 counties here in Indiana. And fueling that torch will be E85, or a fuel that is 85% ethanol. Purdue tested a lot of different blends of fuels that they could use, and they discovered that the best and probably the most economical was the 85% ethanol blend.
Which is great. Again, Indiana, is just so proud of all of our heritage and the use of agriculture products for the future and sustainment of our state. So Ken, congratulations on all these things. So what are some of the new plans or changes that we can expect from the Indiana Corn and Soybean Alliance in 2016 and beyond, Ken?
Well, I don't know that we're going to do a whole lot different in the coming year. As always, the Corn Marketing Council and the Soybean Alliance are committed to building markets for Indiana corn and soybeans, but we're increasingly committed to ensuring that Hoosiers have clean air and clean water. As you know, there's been a lot of focus on both of those areas in recent months. I know a lot of people look around and they think their air is pretty clean. You don't see any obvious pollution out there. But recent studies have shown that children who are in high traffic areas, high vehicle traffic areas, are more susceptible to asthma than those away from that. We know that the fuel emissions or the tailpipe emissions from our vehicles, even though it's unseen, contain fairly high levels of toxic aromatic hydrocarbons like benzene and toluene, and also fine particulate matter, which can cause some lung problems. So, I know we have the perception that in most areas air is pretty clean, and up in your area especially, I think we still need to do a better job. And we believe that biofuels, whether it's biodiesel or higher ethanol blends, can help us clean up the air quality in our state.
And we totally agree. And we continue to promote the different bio opportunities throughout our state, and we look forward to being a partner in regards to air quality and improving the quality of life throughout our state. So, Ken, any closing thoughts with the Indiana Corn and Soybean Alliance?
Well, weather this time of year is really important. Since we're reliant on the checkoff, which basically is a function of how many bushels of corn and soybeans we produce here in the state. Obviously we'd like to see planting get off to a good start and get completed and, avoid some major weather problems this summer. And that will provide us with more funds, to fuel our programs, and in particular those that benefit the environment.
Well, Ken, keep up the good work. We look forward to hearing more about some of the great programs and some of the great kickoffs that are going to happen throughout the year. And we're just very thankful for all the great work that you do. And that will do it for today's edition of the Green Radio Network. I'm your host, Carl Lissick. Thanks again to our guest, Mr. Ken Parrent. And be sure to join us again on WIMS Radio and Girard Media for the next edition of the Green Radio Network. And visit us online at southshorecleancities.org.